In the mid-80s, the AWA became a distant third when competing against the WWF and the NWA. In 1987, the company was in survival mode, and in order to try and stay competitive, a relationship was formed between AWA promoter Vern Gagne and Memphis-based CWA promoter Jerry Jarrett. The King of Memphis, Jerry Lawler, would become the AWA champion after defeating Curt Hennig in May of 1988, and so Vern had hoped that this relationship could create a viable alternative to what was going on in other bigger promotions. World Class Championship Wrestling were also having some financial problems. Vern welcomed the Dallas-based promotion into his new little club, and so Vern's AWA, Jarrett's CWA, and the Von Erich's WCCW were all now allies, and they had a chance to create something special in order to compete with the big dogs. It all made perfect sense. The AWA had promoted SuperClash shows in the past, with SuperClash 1 featuring stars from the AWA, NWA and World Class competing inside the ring. The first SuperClash was a direct response to WrestleMania 1, which was held a few months prior, and not only did the show draw a respectable 20,000 people to Comiskey Park in Chicago, but the event itself was also pretty decent. Compare it to WrestleMania 1 in terms of ring work, and it's hard for anyone to say that the inaugural WrestleMania was better. NWA superstars competed at the first SuperClash along with Vern Gagne's AWA stars. However, a pay dispute would lead to the NWA cutting ties with the AWA. Jim Crockett claimed that the show earned nearly $300,000, while Vern said it was only around $200,000. The NWA promoter felt that the AWA promoter was withholding quite a lot of money. So while the show itself was pretty good, the fallout from the event was really bad. SuperClash 2, taking place in the Cow Palace in San Francisco, featured mainly AWA stars, so there's not much to talk about here. But SuperClash 3 went back to being a legit supercard featuring superstars from many different promotions. What's more, SuperClash 3 would be the first ever AWA show that was put on pay-per-view. It was gonna be the AWA's Hail Mary against the WWF and the NWA, a way to put the organisation back on the map while also elevating the other promotions involved in the show. Jerry Lawler also stated that one of the reasons why SuperClash 3 was put on pay-per-view was that hopefully a network would see how successful it was, and in turn, the AWA could get a weekly show on cable television. Turns out SuperClash 3 would be a complete disaster with low attendance numbers, a low buy rate, a ton of bad matches, promoters who didn't trust each other, and another fallout that concerned Vern Gagne allegedly holding back money from the other promotions involved. Triple H said it best really. SuperClash 3 was like watching three sinking ships jumping onto one ship so they could all sink together. So let's take a quick look at the show and see where it all went wrong. The third SuperClash may not be a great wrestling show, but it's one of those events that's quite important when considering the entire history of the business. One of those events that I feel every wrestling fan should at least know about. It's December 13th, 1988. SuperClash 3 takes place in the UIC Pavilion in Chicago. Kinda funny, seeing as WCW Chi-Town Rumble would take place in the same venue a few months later, and that particular event is gaining legendary status thanks to its main event. The big match of this show will be a title versus title match, AWA champion Jerry Lawler versus World Class champion Kerry Von Erich. And this is a match I've watched a few times now, and it is good, so at least we've got that to look forward to. We've got 1,672 fans in attendance, a dire number right here that does make you wonder why they didn't hold this event in Memphis, Dallas, or somewhere down south instead of Chicago. Around 45,000 bought the show on pay-per-view, and just for comparison's sake, the WWF Survivor Series a few weeks prior pulled in an estimated 310,000 pay-per-view buys. Starrcade 88 would do 150,000 buys. We have Ray Stevens and Lee Marshall serving as our commentators. Vern Gagne and David McLean of POWW will join these two throughout the show. And our opening match sees Los Guerreros, Chavo, Mando and Hector, taking on the Rock and Roll RPMs and Cactus Jack. The RPMs consist of future WWF and WCW jobber Mike Davis and Tommy Lane. Mick Foley had only been competing professionally for a few years at this point, and quite early on we see what he's made of when he takes a backdrop on the floor, though really Los Guerreros are the stars of the opening match, mainly Hector Guerrero who flips, rolls and jumps around the ring. Chavo Classic's no slouch either, and it's Chavo who ends up getting the win for his team after a moonsault. But the RPMs did practically nothing but show off their ridiculous haircuts. Interesting to see a young Cactus Jack. The Guerreros were fun to watch. The RPM sucked, and in general, the match was just okay. I wouldn't call it terrible, but it was just okay. You may notice this lady getting interviewed backstage. Her name is Nina. She represents the Powerful Women of Wrestling organization, and she'd compete a decade later in the WWF as Ivory. Before this, Nina worked in Glow as Tina Ferrari, and tonight she's competing in a POW lingerie battle royal for 10 grand. She says the match may not be too pretty, and trust me folks, that's an understatement. Next up, we have Jeff Jarrett, the world-class light heavyweight champion, even though he's a Memphis boy, taking on the flamboyant Eric Embry. They spelled flamboyant wrong, and old Eric didn't look too flamboyant at all, did he? I'm just thinking too, every main promoter involved in SuperClash has their kids working on the show. Jeff Jarrett, Kerry Von Erich, and Greg Gagne all compete at this event. Nepotism Clash 3. Yeah, sorry, that wasn't good. The two trade clotheslines at the opening bell. Jeff then misses a running crossbody and he spends a fair portion of the bout sitting on the outside selling his arm. Mr. Flamboyant here then focuses on the injured body part, but soon enough Jeff comes back with a missile dropkick. Double J continues selling the arm and shoulder though. A few pin attempts follow, but Eric counters a sunset flip to get the win. Only 4 minutes of action here, but what we got was fine. Eric says the belt's back where it belongs during a post-match interview. He then babyfaces the crowd by saying he's going to get a doctor to check on Jeff Jarrett, and SuperClash continues on. So far, it's not terrible guys, I've seen way worse. Eric's career ended when he was involved in a road accident in October 1992. His car was hit by a big rig truck and he suffered a badly bruised liver along with severe ligament and cartilage damage in his knee. He took this accident as a sign to get out of the wrestling business. We have another interview with one of the POWW ladies, and her name is, it's the terrorist. The Syrian terrorist to be precise, though she was born in Las Vegas. Fans of Glow may remember her as Palestina. What a name. Jimmy Valiant took on Wayne Bloom in the next matchup. Bloom would team up with Mike Enos in the future to form the Beverly Brothers, while Jimmy Valiant made his debut way back in 1964, and he'd have quite a storied career, leading up to him having his last recorded match in 2023. Yeah, our boy was working until he was 80 years old. It's a shame this match is absolute dog shit and it only goes for around 20 seconds. A back elbow and an elbow drop from the Boogie Woogie Man scores Valiant the win. Easy payday for sure, but let's hope he gets his check in the mail, because according to Jerry Lawler, no one ended up getting paid for this gig. Bambi is the next lady who gets interviewed backstage. Kinda crazy that this show's being built around this lingerie battle royal. Anyway, some of you may remember Bambi from her time in WCCW, and she has absolutely nothing of interest to say here. Brickhouse Brown takes on Iceman King Parsons next. This one was for the World Class Texas Heavyweight Championship, and you gotta respect the Iceman for having such wonderful hair. Takes a real man to walk about like that. Brickhouse Brown has some dance moves, ladies and gents, and he doesn't do too badly at the match opening. King Parsons ends up on the outside a few times where we get to see more of that fabulous hair. But when the match resumes, the Iceman takes control with a high knee followed by a nice snap suplex. One thing I will say about this show is the sound of the mat is very satisfying. There's a loud thump anytime someone hits the canvas. In general though, the overall presentation is very boring, and it seems the only thing Vern Gagne spent money on was a new ring apron. A big right hand makes the Iceman beg for mercy. Brickhouse follows up with a running forearm. There's absolutely no crowd reaction at all for this match unfortunately, but it comes to an end when Brickhouse covers Parsons, but our pigtail friend gets his foot on the bottom rope. Brickhouse thinks he's won it even though the referee's hand didn't slap the mat for a third time, and so Iceman produces those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway. One punch later, Iceman King Parsons wins this pretty crappy match. Iceman explains that he was once Brickhouse's teacher, but he didn't teach him everything. It would have been really nice to know all this before the match took place. Still, two guys here who did have pretty storied careers. Parsons was a mainstay on world-class television, and he'd eventually move over to Herb Abrams' UWF. And Brickhouse would stay put when World Class and the CWA merged to create the USWA, having matches against Flex Kavana in the USWA promotion, and also wrestling a WWF dark match against Hunter Hearst Helmsley in 1995. The next ladies interviewed for the upcoming Battle Royal are Brandy May and Pocahontas. Yes, Pocahontas. Old Poca says she's going to war dance all over the ring tonight, while Brandy May says she's going to lose no clothes when the POWW women collide inside the squared circle. Bad Company, consisting of Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka, are going to team up with Medusa Maselli to take on the Top Guns and Wendy Richter. This is a mixed tag match for the AWA Women's and AWA Tag Team titles, so winner takes all. This isn't the usual Top Guns lineup, by the way. John Paul's injured, so Derek Dukes is taking his place. Bad Company and Medusa are being managed by Diamond Dallas Page, and DDP gets some cheap heat before introducing these representatives of his Diamond Exchange. The match gets underway with what was supposed to be all three heels getting thrown into each other. Medusa and Wendy didn't get the memo though, and so it takes them ages before they remember to do the spot. The majority of the bout centers around Derek Dukes needing to tag out, but he keeps getting cut off by Bad Company. And then the women get a chance to do a bit of work, the highlight of which was this powerbomb from Wendy Richter. The end of the match was a total disaster though. Wendy's supposed to duck out of the way when Tanaka tries to kick her, but instead she just takes the kick. You can hear DDP shouting to do it again, which Pat does right away, and this time Wendy does remember to go down. Derek's then supposed to dropkick Tanaka, but he misses by a mile, and Wendy ends up pinning Medusa for the win. Dreadful, just dreadful. After the bout, Medusa gets assaulted by the babyfaces. The crowd love it, but it of course wouldn't fly today. And Medusa then smacks Pat Tanaka on the outside for messing up, resulting in DDP throwing her out of their little group. The first two matches of this show were at least passable, but we've taken an incredible nosedive here, and we aren't even halfway through the event yet. Kerry Von Erich gets interviewed backstage. He has his little girl Holly with him, and Kerry says he's here to show everyone that there's only one world champion. There's only one Mona Lisa, there's only one Eiffel Tower, there can only be one champion. But he knows full well that there's also an NWA championship and a WWF championship, but let's not worry about such trivial things. Greg Gagne wrestles Ron Garvin next. Ron was just getting ready to head off to the WWF right here, and he gave up the AWA International TV Championship before this event. But Ronnie was brought back for this match, and the vacant title is on the line. Because Ronnie was heading to New York, he decided he wasn't going to come back and do a clean job for Vern's son. So it ended with Garvin getting counted out, and Greg became the new champion. One spot sticks out in this match really badly, and that was a crossbody from Greg that was supposed to send both men out to the floor. Greg couldn't get any momentum, and it ends up being a hilariously bad piece of work that sticks out like a sore thumb. There's some post-match brawling that's also pretty bad. I mean, who gets in the ring to lock in a sleeper after the match is already ended? It's not just Garvin who applies a sleeper, Greg does it too. Man, I don't know. Greg also gets cheap hate by comparing his victory to the Minnesota Vikings beating the Chicago Bears, all because the crowd preferred Garvin over Greg. Also, it's kinda hard to believe that Greg's 41 years old here. He looks ancient. Backstage, Jerry Lawler says he knows about Kerry Von Erich's bad ankle after his motorbike accident, and he planned on going after the injured body part in this match. Mate, it's a bit more serious than an injured ankle, but okay. Lawler heard that Kerry's been protecting that ankle very well, and it's probably not the best route to take in order to beat the modern day warrior in the ring tonight, but the King does have a strategy that he's currently keeping close to his chest. It's been built up all night and it's finally arrived. The POW Lingerie Battle Royal, and my god, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. You can eliminate someone by throwing them over the top rope or ripping their clothes off, and we've got Nina, Peggy Lee Leather, Luna Vachon, Brandy May, The Terrorist, Lori Lynn, Pocahontas and Malibu competing in the ring. David McLean calls the action. He's doing his best to get his talent over, but nothing could save this match from being a complete dumpster fire. In the end, The Terrorist won after eliminating Brandy May. I like how Brandy held on for dear life only to get unceremoniously kicked off the apron. After the match, The Terrorist rubs it in by saying America sucks or something, I don't know. And backstage, Peggy Lee and Luna Vachon get interviewed. Something tells me that David McLean only agreed to have the POWW women on this show if they could all get promo time either before or after the bout. It is a bit excessive, isn't it? Bill Apter then comes out to award Jerry Lawler with the PWI Inspirational Wrestler of the Year award, but the King doesn't come out to accept his plaque. I'm guessing he was too busy backstage getting prepared for his match, or he had no idea he was supposed to come out and get his award. But whatever the case, poor Bill Apter looks legitimately sad that there's going to be no award presentation held inside the arena. What a clusterfuck of a show. Next up, it's a boot camp match. Colonel De Beers versus Sergeant Slaughter. You call him Colonel De Beers because he loves drinking beers. Sarge, representing G.I. Joe in the good old US of A, says he's fighting for America tonight and everything it stands for. The Colonel is fighting for South Africa and beers. Seriously though, the De Beers name comes from the De Beers Group mining and trading company that was based in South Africa, and the De Beers gimmick is one that could never fly in today's social climate. The Colonel's also part of the Diamond Exchange, so DDP's here to do the introductions. De Beers takes a beating with Sarge's riding crop for the first portion of the match, though he's able to take it away when Slaughter gets choked out. Sarge takes a few shots in the ring before the action spills to the outside. In here, De Beers uses one of the rope holds that's used to keep the audience away from the ring. There's an unintentionally hilarious spot where the Colonel uses Sarge's helmet for a headbutt. It just looks so dumb. But Slaughter fights back when De Beers accidentally hits DDP off the ring apron. We see the Cobra clutch and Sergeant Slaughter wins the match. Afterwards, Sheik Adnan El Kassi runs in to attack Sergeant Slaughter. Sarge fights back, but he has no chance at all when the Iron Sheik makes a surprise appearance. Sarge gets beaten up pretty badly by these evil foreigners, but then good guy foreigners Los Guerreros show up to help Slaughter out. After the match, Slaughter says he's going to declare war on these jabronis. Iraq and Iran may be friends tonight, but these bozos will be 6 feet under when Sarge gets through with them. Backstage, Bill Apter's able to give Jerry Lawler his PWI award, but you can tell they weren't ready to record this at all due to the camera overexposure that makes your eyes bleed. At least Bill looks happy though, and that's all that matters. Well, we've had a string of terrible matches, but thankfully the next one isn't too bad. The Samoan SWAT team, consisting of Samu and Fatu, wearing Jagger shirts, taking on Michael Hayes and Steve Cox. The SWAT team are managed by former Fabulous Freebird Buddy Roberts, and Michael Hayes wanted to get his hands on Buddy ever since he left the Freebirds. So there's a good bit of story here, and the match itself goes off without a hitch. Nothing to really point out that was bad or anything. That's the thing with this show though, you're just accepting average matches as good at this point because everything else has either been terrible or just terribly bland. What SuperClash 3 is really missing is the flashy production of the WWF and all the pizzazz that surrounds a WWF pay-per-view. It's also missing real quality matches that one could find in the main NWA promotions, and you can instantly tell why the AWA, CWA and World Class were much further behind in regards to their national and global footprint. Everything looks cheap and even a little unappealing. That's not to say you need to have high production values to put on good wrestling shows, but you don't want to look like dog shit either, you know what I mean? Michael Hayes couldn't get his hands on the honorary use on this night. As a matter of fact, it was due to Roberts that Hayes lost the match via pinfall. Michael sails for a very long time after the bell rings as he lays on the mat for what seems like an eternity. And after the bout, Iron Sheik and Adnan talk a lot of old bollocks, don't even care. Though what is noteworthy is that on the network version of SuperClash, this interview gets abruptly cut off when the Iron Sheik begins talking about Allah. Things must have got a little spicy. Before Kerry Von Erich and Jerry Lawler lock it up, we've got an Indian strap match. This one is not of the Yappa Pie variety, unfortunately, but it does include Manny Fernandez and Wahoo McDaniel. IWGP champion Tatsumi Fujinami's here, and Fernandez gets in his face wanting a title shot. He calls him a racial slur here, which I won't repeat in this video. So Fujinami helps Wahoo get a free shot on his opponent and the match is on. Fernandez totally deserved it. Out of curiosity, I looked up how many strap matches Wahoo McDaniel's competed in, and I kid you not, 123 strap matches have been recorded for Wahoo McDaniel. That is insane, and there's probably even more that haven't been recorded. Stagger Lee Marshall says Wahoo has never lost a strap match, which is just completely not true. But he does win this one, and it's quite a slow bout. Slow, but still pretty violent. Both guys got busted open pretty badly as they both whip each other and punch each other with a strap wrapped around their fists. Though in the end, Fernandez kicks Wahoo into the final turnbuckle and McDaniel wins the match. The two continue fighting after the bell. The referee gets tossed out of the ring. Fujinami returns to the ring to save Wahoo, and after the bell, the winner gets interviewed by Lee Marshall. Wahoo says this strap match didn't settle anything because he wants Fernandez dead. And that's just really fucking nice, isn't it? It's time for Kerry Von Erich versus Jerry Lawler. Vern Gagne, an AWA president and all-around goof, Stanley Blackburn give their predictions. Vern says he can't choose a winner, and Stanley says it's a flip of a coin. So thanks for the deep insight, guys. Fucking invaluable information right here. Vern also said the world is watching right now and everyone wants to see who's going to win this next match. A lie if I've ever heard one. Jerry Lawler's in the ring. He promises that there will be only one world champion after this match, and the King also understands that Kerry Von Erich has a lot of fans here tonight. Lawler was a babyface around this time, but he knew all too well that the fans would cheer for the modern day warrior, and cheer they did. Kerry comes out to a great ovation as he holds a yellow rose in memory of his brother David. Strangely, Kerry keeps looking at his bicep before the ring introductions, and that's because he managed to somehow cut it open before this match took place. Jerry Lawler said Kerry was messed up backstage and this cut wasn't planned nor part of the match, and so Jerry would have to work the cut into the match somehow. After the two shove each other around a bit, Jerry whacks Kerry's arm off the top turnbuckle and you can see the cut right here. Kerry would continue looking at his arm and checking on his arm, but it takes a little longer for the King to go back to the injured body part. The fight is now on. Lawler gets frustrated after taking two clotheslines from Kerry. Jerry then dodges a third, but he also misses a clothesline of his own, allowing Kerry to strike him again. Kerry then invites Jerry in for a test of strength. The King gets brought down to the mat. When the two stand, Jerry's able to trip Von Erich up, though he misses a fist drop. Kerry follows up with a tornado punch that looked pretty damn great, but the King kicks out of the follow-up cover. Jerry then bites down on Kerry's bicep, giving the King a chance to go on offense before sending Kerry over the top rope with a punch. Kerry takes his time getting back in the ring, but he's able to floor Jerry again with another tornado punch from the apron, though King gets his knees up when Kerry tries getting back inside the ropes. Jerry then performs his signature piledriver. He thinks he's got it won, but Von Erich no-sells it. When King turns around, he takes yet another tornado punch and Kerry wants to end it with an iron claw. The King stops Kerry from locking in the famous Von Erich finishing move, and then the referee takes a bump when Kerry kicks out of a cover. There's no official as Kerry pulls off a piledriver of his own. Von Erich has the match won, but the ref's knocked out just like all his front teeth. When the ref wakes up, Jerry's able to kick out, and then the bloodbath begins. The two head outside. Kerry punches the ring post by accident, and this puts him at a disadvantage. The King then puts on those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway, and Kerry gets clobbered. This gets followed up with a second rope fist drop from Jerry Lawler, and Kerry's been busted open badly. A second fist drop gets countered with a claw around King's midsection, but Jerry won't give up. And so Kerry locks the claw around King's head, but the blood loss here is getting pretty insane. Jerry gets a foot on the ropes and the referee checks on Von Erich. The official allows the match to continue on, so another claw gets locked in. Jerry won't give up and the official becomes increasingly concerned about Kerry's state right now. But Von Erich brings Jerry to his feet and the King's able to fight back. Jerry uses an object from his tights and swear to God, every time Jerry does this you just know he's not actually holding anything. Whatever the case, Kerry goes down and Jerry gets in another shot as Von Erich's now in a lot of trouble. A few more punches on the mat gets followed up with more punches when both men are standing up again. But the King remains in control when Kerry misses a tornado punch. Another shot with that invisible illegal object follows and Kerry falls out of the ring. The match resumes inside the ropes and this time Kerry's able to fight back. Lawler takes a ton of punishment in the corner and when both men stand in the middle of the ring, they immediately go down when they punch each other in the jaw. The referee continues to show concern towards Kerry, and that concern leads to the match ending when Von Erich applies the claw one more time. The move gets locked in, but the official stops the match due to excessive blood loss. He won't let Kerry continue, and that means Jerry Lawler becomes both the AWA champion and the WCCW champion. Kerry can't believe what happened. He lifts both belts in the air before leaving the ring, but the referee raises Jerry's hand in victory and the King cuts a promo after the bout. He says he respects Von Erich, but the referee did the right thing. Jerry would have blinded Kerry if the match continued on, so it was the right call from the official. Kerry, meanwhile, doesn't share these sentiments backstage. Kerry says he's never heard of a match in the state of Texas where the referee stops the action due to blood loss, but Kerry, mate, you're not in Texas right now, are you? Stanley Blackburn says he made this new provision. He told officials to stop matches if there's ever too much blood loss. And yes, Stan, it would have been great if you actually announced this before the card. Apparently, Kerry went into this show fully expecting to beat Lawler, but it's a funny old political game, this wrestling business, especially when you've got multiple promoters trying to get their talent over. Still, Von Erich didn't look like a loser when all was said and done, so I'm sure Daddy Fritz wasn't too angry. The crowd did not like the outcome though. They chanted bullshit when Jerry got announced as the match winner. Insane as Jerry didn't get paid for working SuperClash 3 as promised, he ended up keeping the belt and he didn't work for the company ever again. Verne Gagne had to get another championship belt made and Lawler kept the original at home. Easily the best match on this card though. One good match doesn't make a great show by any means, but even Lawler said it was one of the best and most memorable matches of his whole career. Because they didn't want to end the show on a downer, SuperClash ends with the Rock and Roll Express taking on the Stud Stable. You'd like to think then that the Rock and Roll would get a clean victory to send the crowd home happy, but no, it's a fucking double disqualification, meaning the show actually does end on a downer. Tons of people have already left the show. Ricky, Robert, Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller brawled outside the ring during the closing moments of the match and the referee just said, "Fuck it, you guys should go home too." So fans left the arena feeling a bit bewildered when this one was said and done. Fans are already leaving the arena during the Rock and Roll's post-match interview and no one cared about what the Stud Stable had to say backstage. And by the time Verne Gagne pats himself on the back at ringside, the arena's almost empty. As mentioned earlier, it's been said that no one got paid for this show. At least that's what Jerry Lawler said. Jerry Jarrett and the Von Erichs felt ripped off by Verne and it didn't take long for World Class and the CWA to merge, creating the USWA promotion while Verne's AWA continued on while on life support. Vince McMahon said he knew these promoters couldn't get a cup of coffee together, never mind work together, in order to compete against the WWF, so McMahon was not worried at all about this SuperClash card. The show was an utter failure. Lawler vs Von Erich wasn't enough to make people turn away from the WWF and the NWA, and after this event, the AWA wouldn't be seen again on pay-per-view. Was it as bad as everyone makes it out to be? Yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm currently watching WCW pay-per-views right now that are much worse than SuperClash 3, but that's just comparing bad stuff to really bad stuff. Lawler vs Von Erich is worth a watch. The opener is also kinda cool, if not way too short. Nothing else on this card stands out as it all ranges from painfully mediocre to downright terrible, but it is still a fascinating attempt by a bunch of failing promotions trying one last time to keep themselves afloat. Thank you for watching everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please take care.